Hi! I'm Arthur, and this is going to get really unprofessional really quick. It's not been a secret, I will admit. I love the Leagues of Votann. I love their balance of sci-fi, techno, dwarf Vikings mixed with Warhammer Grimdark. It's pretty cool. So color me excited when late into the 9th edition of 40k, they announced that squats are in fact coming back. Not just coming back, but coming back with a vengeance, and it is going to be pretty radical. An entire new army, new models, new codex, and an incredibly different playstyle from everything else that was in the game, with one hell of a release box too. See, I have had a lot of issues in the past with a lot of Games Workshop's boxes that were released. Like, good example of one of the worst is the Sisters of Battle release box. I have nightmares about this box, my dudes. Every single unit in this box was incomplete in such a way that you need to get multiple boxes and share with friends to fill out what was there. Like, good example, the Sisters Repentia. The Sisters Repentia in the box come in a unit of 4. The boxes come in a unit of 10. You kind of see how you're not going to end up having a complete unit and just would be using those 4 units as set dressing. It's so annoying. The entire box was like that one penitent engine when they came in boxes of 2. It was rough. So when the Leagues of Votann box was announced that it was going to be a thing, I was nervous that we were going to get something similar. But when they displayed what was in there, I had hope. It came with the Codex, 2 full sets of the Hearthkin Warriors, which are the mainline troop choice for them, 1 set of the Hernkin Pioneers, which were the scout bikes and high mobility guys, 2 characters, the Call, which is a Space Marine captain equivalent, and an Einer champion. And everything in the box was a multi-part plastic kit that you could make however you want. They were the release kits that you were going to get upon the release of the box. You could make whatever you want. The box came with tokens to use for the faction's unique grudge mechanic, and the cards that, I never used, but they are pretty fun to look at, I guess. Regardless, the box was released to a lot of hype. People were excited because the meme was the squats were never coming back no matter what, so to see them actually here was insane. Of course, I was ride or die for minute 1. I mean, I gotta rep the short, bald, bearded, grumpy men. This all happened pretty quick, to be honest, which was good. The brisk pace made it so that no one lost any hype for them. But that's where it starts to kind of fall apart. The first of the troubles began when the box was released, and people could actually play the army. And the army was completely broken upon release, and so powerful that people would buy the box 10 times over in order to have playable sets for the 3 to 4 units that were in said box. This was before the transports, the heavy vehicles, the specialist units, and all that jazz were out. This shit was wacky. To try to explain it as best as possible, a lot of it was to do with the grudge mechanic. The tokens you got numbered 1 to 3. Grudge tokens would be built up every time your opponent would slight you in some way, shape, or form. There was a cute list of things that would generate more grudges on your opponent's units. One of the more interesting aspects of it were if you had a call on the table, it could just look at a miniature and give them a grudge token once per turn, which was neat. But the effect was if you had 1 token on them, and you rolled for a hit roll, on a hit roll of 6, you automatically wounded as well and didn't need to roll for it. If you had 2 tokens, it was a 5 or a 6. 3 tokens, 4, 5, or 6. Now this on its own is pretty powerful considering it was a ranged army, albeit a short-ranged army. But the problem lies in that some weapons were stated in the book to generate mortal wounds on a wound roll of a 6, which if you had a grudge token and got the auto wound, it counted as rolling a 6 for the wound. So people were spamming so many mortal wounds that not much could survive against it. This, alongside bike spam, was causing issues. So GW immediately started to go into damage control, even contacting good old James Workshop himself for an apology video.
Of course they're good. They needed a leg up. They haven't won a tournament in 30 years. Right. Okay. How about this? When you order the army, we'll just cut out the middleman and send you a first place tournament trophy.
This is only the beginning of a cycle of shitty trends that you can track, because immediately after this, 10th edition was announced, which is fucking weird. I know it's not uncommon, but to have a new faction unveiled, a new codex released, and then within 3 months it is invalidated, it's just weird. Before we get into the 10th edition troubles, I want to cover 2 key aspects, one positive and one negative, albeit the positive one turns into a negative later. The positive one is that upon release, the Leagues of Votann were a very unique faction. They were a defensive, slow-moving, short-ranged, ranged army, which we don't really have. The closest we have is Death Guard, but they focus more on ignoring damage, while the Leagues of Votann have the ability to decrease your armor penetration. For exo armor, you could decrease damage automatically by 1. You had a lot of units that had low wound amounts, but they had the ability to just block out attacks outright. Alongside that, their weapons were very short range, with the majority of them being 24 inches at the longest. But the damage and fire output was super consistent across the board. Everything felt like it was a good workhorse to work with. They had mining lasers and beam weapons that only shot once or twice, but they hit everything in a straight line depending on where you're aiming, which is cool, so you could get 5 or 6 attacks if your opponent didn't think about spacing properly. It was a cute gimmick that made them stand out a lot. That is a bit of a minor positive to compare with the big negative that is, pretty bad. This bad thing is that there were no books about them upon release. There wasn't really any literature to expand upon them at all. Everything that there was to know about them upon release was in the Codex, and to some lesser degree, the Arcs of Omen series, which was the end series for 9th edition. I wanted more lore for them, but don't worry, 1 year later, and we still don't have books for them. So that's cool, I guess. Nah, it's fine. I'm fine. Look at me. Do I look happy? I am happy. Come 10th edition 40k, and this is where my major problems occur. So first and foremost, we got 2 new models that don't have unique rules. They are just limited edition FOMO anniversary models, which, cool, I guess. But I mean, I got them. When 10th edition dropped, literally every League of Votann player was sad. That is specifically because all of the uniqueness of the faction was bled out, and the way the faction was updated seemed so short-sighted. There's no better way to show how short-sighted it is than to point out how they changed the grudge system. Before, you could have a maximum of 3 tokens. Now you can only have 2, which I think sucks because I got the tokens from the box that were in the original League of Votann release set. And guess what? On about a third or more of them, it says 3 on them. So I just have a bunch of useless cardboard chips in my room that were useful about 3 months ago. So good on them for staying consistent. They also removed beam weapons as a mechanic, opting to give them just an additional couple hits on a 6, which I guess is okay, but boring. They got rid of 90% of their defensive options, like, as I mentioned, their armor used to at base negate armor penetration. Their exo armor was super durable, but because the models that had it had low wounds, it was a bit of a trade-off. Now, it's just a 2-up save and 5 to 6 toughness. It sucks. The movement of the models before was slow but consistent. They all auto-advanced 3 inches if it was infantry and 6 inches if it was a vehicle. Now it's just a d6 like everyone else. And to top it off, they removed every single different melee weapon for the main Hearthkin and just called them kin melee weapons, which is bullshit, as a power fist should be stronger than a sword or an axe. It stunk of overcorrection, trying to make the army balanced, but in the process of doing so, they ended up making the army so bad that it was at the bottom of all the rankings for competitive lists for months. They only just recently fixed that, but all this has left such a bad taste in my mouth. Like a bad hand job, it just rubbed me the wrong way how they treated this army. And this army is missing so much for you to have options to properly play them. They don't have any real heavy hitters like a Dreadnought or even like an Ogren style 3 model unit with big melee. They have no flying units at all, unless you count the fucking birds. They have like barely any melee that's worth anything, and all of their shooting kind of blends together now, especially since they removed all the special shit from 9, like beams and the Magna Rail mechanic. I just want better for them. So where does that leave us? They have no literature. They have been buffed recently due to people complaining, and they have a cute Christmas box coming out, which I will consider buying and likely be too poor to do so. And no codex or announcements for the rest of the year. Next year, though, I have high hopes. If you pay attention to the rumor mill, you see sometimes there can be Votann adjacent miniatures on display. We also got a kill team, which was a nice addition, but my biggest hope going into 2024 is that there is a second wave of releases. Jump pack Hearthkin, flyers, mining robots and shit. Just something more than just if they announced a new single character to buff a unit that no one was using. Rumors have it that novels are in the work, but I won't get my hopes up yet. In short, GW fumbled the release of this faction so much that it was a flash in the pan, followed by the pan disappearing to the fucking back rooms. They seem to avoid the topic of the leagues like a plague, and it's really sad, but I'm not jumping ship. I love these miniatures, even if there aren't too many of them. I just want some support, goddammit. But that's just me. What do you lot think about the leagues of Votann in their short tenure of existing in the 40k sphere? Good? Bad? I mean, I doubt you'd say good. It hasn't been, but I want to know. So let me know in the comments. Also, remember to like and subscribe as it helps the channel immensely. Before I go, I want to thank my channel members for supporting me through these dark times, and if you want to support me as well as have access to extra content, then consider becoming a channel member today. Before I go, I just want to point out this miniature. This is one of the anniversary miniatures that was released in the interim between 9th and 10th edition to tide over those hungry Votann players for not having fucking anything. Yeah, cool miniature, right? Too bad there's no fucking rules for a plasma sword on the call miniature, which is what it's supposed to be. Oh, what's that? They did have rules for it in 9th edition for Legends? That's cool. What about fucking 10th? I got the model. I love the model. But there's no rules for a combi bolter. I'm going now. Fuck.